Ezekiel Kralin sent me a story to read. It's further in the story of the dogs and dog sitting and his manipulative meth head friend. A real Christmas story happening right now by Ezekiel Kralin. Please note, he writes, in my early Brindlekin Tales chapters, I used pseudonyms Taco and Wiley for Deke's pups, whose real names are Lucky and Flacco, respectively. This is one of my early tales, December 24, 2020. The original title was going to be Why or What I Neglected to Mention, now revealed, but something new has just entered the mix, so I changed it to the title you now see, and for darn good reason, which reason will become apparent at the end of this tale, so bear with me. You will be greatly rewarded. What I neglected to mention, now revealed. In my desire to wrap up my previous tale, quote, I should kick him in the ass, I left out some really important issues, not that I did so intentionally, but they chose to conceal themselves in a rarely visited corner of my mind until sometime later when they kicked into action. They started gnawing at me the next day, which is today, Xmas Eve. Honestly, I can't think of a better way to celebrate than revealing to you now these additional revelations. At first, he demanded the jackets be removed, but I reminded Deke that I earned these donations, and it's friggin' cold tonight, and he should care more about the pup's well-being than his own pride. Well, he mumbled something which I couldn't translate, but he softened up in a few moments without so much as a whimper. Thus the jackets remained securely in place. Good thing, too, because it would have killed me to unbind them from my beloved four-legged brindle friends, knowing how they'd suffer. I would have rebelled and started a revolution before ever doing that, with Deke the first casualty. Sidebar. The first jackets received were too small. My fault, because correctly measuring for a dog's jacket is new to me, or perhaps the seller's instructions were skewed. So I rectified that by making an exchange through another resident whose dachshund slipped into them perfectly. So she purchased from me on Amazon the next largest size. They arrived 3 days later and suited Wiley and Taco to a T. He griped about the dogs being sluggish after leaving my hovel. They don't play or run around for 2 or 3 days after visiting you. Not a frisky bone in their body. It's like you wore them out, running them through the hallways like that. Cut it out, Deke, I rebounded. All they mostly do is sleep in the lap of luxury when they're with me, and they run through the hallway 2 or 3 times a day for less than 3 minutes. Maybe it's the shock of returning to the cold night air and having to lie down on concrete most of the time. We've been having an unusually long cold snap, in case you haven't noticed. It's 43 fucking degrees right now. Then he abruptly switched to yet another faux complaint. Wiley seems fine, but Taco is definitely skinnier since I left him with you. His ribs are sticking out. He gets fat again in 2 or 3 days when he's with me. No, he doesn't. He looks perfectly fine all the time, whether he's with you or with me. He doesn't get fat or skinny. You just love to argue. You make things up. You lie just so you can press my buttons. It's like sport for you, and I'm the punching bag. With furrowed brow, Deke gazed directly into my COVID-19 bandana. Last night's was camouflage, of which I have several variations, one heavier on the brown spectrum, one on the blue, and another on the red, plus a ton of the paisley theme in a multitude of colors. This pandemic has brought out the fashionable dandy in me. Why would I lie? What reason would I have? Because you are an asshole, I thought, but did not vocalize. Deke again brought up his long-running argument that in no way should I ever write about him and his dogs. He kept it up, so I declared, I'm going to put huge photos of him and the pups on billboards across the nation and on flying banners just below the clouds and through them, and read my Brindlekin Tales across the airwaves, especially on Fox News and all its myriad affiliates, and drop billions of leaflets from the skies across the planet with his picture on them, his present location, and a different title, Taco and Wiley blurb on each one, translated into all the many different languages spoken here on Earth. Maybe even Latin for the classical brainiacs among us. He rather appreciated my embellished retort, since he could hardly keep from busting out in laughter. At least it appeared that way to me, though it could have been an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, or a fragment of underdone potato. God only knows what the dumpsters offer up to homeless people around the jolly season. But he did make this one interesting, though more than reasonable, stipulation whereby he'd accept someone profiting from his life with the doggies. "I want to see the money," he blurted out after my grandiose proposal, "and lots of it. Lots and lots of it." "No, I'm not writing about you or the dogs, Deke," I reiterated for the umpteenth time. "But you're going to benefit immensely regardless, because it is you who brought me these sweet angels, who in turn brought me a blessed revelation, thanks to their gentle, sweet spirit of pure love, joy, and understanding of how the simple kindness of a furry ball of pure goodness can work tremendous achievements on one's soul and destiny." I closed my paean of praise thusly. So stop imagining things that are never going to happen, that cause you to make blatantly false accusations. "Okay," he said, and nothing more. As I ended our visit and departed back hovel, where my latest and extraordinary work in progress was calling to me like a lover from Mount Olympus, stirring feverishly with lust for yours truly, and yours truly alone, right there on the fainting couch. I suspect that Deke is actually one of my guardian angels, playing out his role to move me along in a proper fashion, which in his case is to hurl at my feet one difficult challenge after another, that I become a better person by overcoming each one through compassionate means. But not without a sense of humor either, for if I'm correct in this conjecture, he definitely knows I'm writing all about him and the pooches, in spite of my convincing reassurance that I am not. In other words, he's having a lark of a time with me, putting me on the spot so often. But the really good thing about all this is that Taco and Wiley are perfectly safe and warm through it all, because, as they are the charges of a loving entity called Deke on this earthly plane, and as you can imagine, my anxieties over them have for the most part dissipated. The greatest thing about this remarkable insight is that Deke most likely is not an addict or homeless, that it's simply part of the guise, a character he's playing rather than his true self. What he does when he's out of my range I can't imagine. Well, I can, but too many possibilities to waste my time over. He's also rambled on about hanging with his people for a few days who live outside the city limits, which gave me the impression he was on his way now and only stopped by to pick up an advance on his allowance. But hours later he was still nearby, hunkering down here in the Castro and just around the corner from me. I came back a second time within scant minutes of that hilarious rendezvous I just recounted, because the angel of inspiration goaded me to tell him my upcoming success is not my doing but that of God's, and how many other people will likewise be elevated, as indeed some already are at this very moment, including my own fortunate self. "I'm not crazy, Deke. This is really happening," I concluded, and prepared to depart once more. "You'll know soon enough what I say is true, because your time is just around the corner." "See you later, alligator," Deke called to me as I crossed Market Street. "In a while, crocodile," I replied. As I'm writing this piece now, Xmas Eve morning, it suddenly occurred to me to make a snapshot of where he and doggies camped out last night. It was only 9:15 a.m., so surely they'd still be hunkered down beneath their makeshift shelter, but just in case they were up, or at least Deke was, I invented this excuse before exiting my building. I'd conceal my smartphone and offer to buy him a large cup of coffee from Rosenberg's, apologizing for not bringing him his favorite hot beverage, blueberry tea, because I ran out of honey. True enough, because I really did run out of honey 2 days ago and forgot to buy more. Well, turns out I needn't have worried, because yes, indeed, their Xmas campout was still there, and all parties concerned were safely concealed and hopefully warm as toast, or reasonably so, seeing as both Brindlekin had their jackets and a blanket to share. Here are 2 pictures. Almost 2 hours had passed before I stepped out to check up on my trio again, this time to sincerely wish Deke a Merry Christmas and offer to buy him coffee and a snack or two, but They weren't around. The area where they had parked for the night was spotless, as if no one had ever camped there in the first place. They might be somewhere nearby. Zeke, don't give up yet, a little budgie told me, so I decided to first head up Market Street to Castro. As I approached, I saw a small gathering of street people huddled together right outside of Subway and the Chevron gas station. Their small piles of possessions were cast along the curb, and lo and behold, rising above all was Deke's shopping cart magic bag of goodies, and Wiley and Taco leashed to it, dancing on their hind feet in merry woofs at my arrival. I stooped down to receive their sweet attention, which I returned in kind. At first I couldn't spot Deke, but then I saw him seated along the inner curb that defined a narrow garden separating gas station from sidewalk. He was surrounded by 6 others, all sharing burritos, Subway sandwiches, coffee, soda, and other snacks and goodies. As I rose, he spotted me. "Hey, Zeke, what up?" "Oh, I just dropped by to wish you Merry Christmas again," I called from where I stood by the cart. Then I stepped forward and right outside the circle of pilgrims. "All people are assholes," I declared. I heard someone chuckle and say, "Boy, ain't that the truth." Looking down toward where the voice arose, I saw a scraggly bearded fellow seated on the concrete near my feet. He had long, dirty blonde hair and wore loose garments cloaked in a striped serape. I grinned back as he noshed on a bulging, steaming, hot half-slice of pita bread stuffed with savories. "No human being is capable of giving the kind of love we all really need," I continued, speaking over the suddenly attentive tribe of vagrants. "Only the sweetness of a dog can do that. Humans are too complicated for such unconditional devotion. No matter how good you are, how long you've walked the path of truth in God's love, you'll fuck up everything in the long run." By now Deke was beaming brightly, soaking up my words like the rays of the sun. I tilted my face toward him and anointed his soul with these Xmas-y words. "So I thank you, Deke, from the bottom of my heart, for bringing Taco and Wiley into my life. They have changed everything for me, and definitely for the better. I have a ton of phone calls to make over the next 2 or 3 hours about getting my stories out there, as well as some other important matters to discuss. It's all good, and to my immense benefit as well as yours. Now I want to spend a few minutes with the Pooches to wish them a Merry Christmas, too." Dick seemed to take all this in stride. Unlike his usual ornery self, he presents to me, "Sure, go ahead. They're dying to see you." Wish I had my smartphone then to take some pictures and a video or two, because the soft green nylon shell of the sleeping bag on which the dogs played reflected pleasingly in the sunlight, mixed as it was with a low pile of jackets and sweaters in deep shades of blue, maroon, and black. They climbed over each other repeatedly, vying to get closer in my arms than is physically possible. The tail wags, the growls of affection, love bites between their little jaws, the rush to slobber all over my face. I was awash in dog's love, and overjoyed to see they still had jackets on. I touched their bodies to discover they were cozily warm, even their uncovered parts, such as their floppy ears and chunky little legs. What a relief to know this. I still had something else to say to Dick, so I stood up and looked at him until he noticed. He waved me over. So I entered an opening in the circle, bent down halfway over him, and softly spoke these words. "I want to tell you something, but I don't want others to hear, as they might not understand. Nothing personal, though." He nodded okay, so I continued. "As I said last night, a lot of good things are going to soon happen in this world, to all the good people in it, and of course you're part of it. One thing they told me, and I don't mean I actually see or hear them, it's just a strong knowing in my heart, is not to worry about Taco and Wiley. They will be perfectly fine forever and always be with you. They will suffer no disease or other mishaps to destroy our bond with them, but in everything else as well, we need not worry ever again. Everything's going to work out fabulously for you, for me, and for millions of other people." I then paused, wondering if there's something I forgot to divulge. No, there didn't seem to be. So I concluded with, "And that's my Christmas gift to you, sharing this knowledge." He thanked me several times over as I stood and walked away, but not before giving the Brindlekin a few more hugs and kisses.